everyone. Welcome to Life Unpotted. We're very excited to have you here as always. And before we jump into today's episode, I want to bring you a quick update that we have started a blog. Every Monday, we'll release a new blog post for you. This week, we released a blog, Allow Your Fears to Empower You. And you can find this in the show notes below. And speaking of fear, that really ties into today's episode. We want to redefine what success is. And we want to redefine what that looks like, as a lot of the times we think failure means not achieving what we set out to achieve, when in reality, failure is not allowing yourself to try. So if we're able to redefine success as understanding that failure is not allowing yourself to try, we're going to get a lot more places than if we defined success as only achieving what we set out to achieve. We're going to fail a lot if we do that. So this is really the message we want to bring you today. And as always, if you like this podcast, please leave a review below. You can follow us on Instagram at Life Unpotted and message us with any thoughts you may have. Please enjoy today's episode.
Hey everyone, it's Sophie. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us again for another conversation. So today we want to talk about perfectionism. Why do we always strive for this false idea of perfectionism? What is perfectionism? And why does it always get in the way of us ever trying to start things? And I think for me, I've been doing a lot of reflection about this the past few months or so, and I've really realized that a lot of the times I don't ever want to start anything because I'm so scared of not being perfect. I'm so scared of failing. And honestly, this creates a lot of anxiety for me. I think it really gets in my way because I just get so anxious that there's so many things I have to do before I can ever get to the point I want to be. For example, you want to start something on the side and you realize that you're starting basically from nowhere, and it can be really intimidating to think of all the things you need to do to get to the place you want to go. And I think that's why a lot of people never start doing anything they want to really try, because you're so scared and you're living in so much fear out of this idea of failure, or never be able to get to this place you want to get to.
So I've also been reflecting on this a lot. I think a lot of it has to do with putting podcast episodes out, because not only are you listening to yourself talk as you talk, but you're listening to yourself talk as you edit and as you make clips, and it can be really brutal. And imperfection, what I have taken away from listening, trying to put things out where I'm judging myself, I think it comes down to you have to ask yourself, why am I doing this thing that I am looking at as imperfect? Because if you want it to be a certain thing, you can't expect it to get there overnight. If that is your expectation, you're going to be beating yourself up, because you have to fail time and time and time, or you have to produce bad work quote unquote bad work time and time and time again in order to get to a place where it's quote unquote good.
Right.
And my realization was that we should not be labeling our work as anything. We shouldn't be labeling it all, because then our energy is going toward, oh, it's bad. And you beat yourself up. And that's taking away energy from creating something. And I realized that as long as you're making something and that you love doing it, there's no way that you can fail at it. Sure, the work may not be incredible, but that's the point, is that you fall in love with the process of doing it, and your validation really comes from inside of you versus the external validation of people liking it. You start to care less what everyone else thinks, and you really start to feel good about what you're doing, and that's the whole purpose of it. And you're never going to be a failure if you have the work at least out there, at least that you're doing something. Because if you were ever too afraid to start it and you have no work, that's a failure. It's not the vulnerability of putting yourself out there and doing it. And each time you want to say this isn't perfect, you just push through it and do it anyways because you like doing it.
Totally. So let me ask you, how do you define failure? Or how have you in the past defined failure versus how you now are trying to define it?
Yeah, light terms, trying to define it. It depends on what day you ask me. Okay, so in the past, I defined it as anything that wasn't perfect was a failure.
So what's perfect to you?
Perfect means everyone loves it and it's regarded highly by everyone. It's a really vague term, but I think what it means is that you have the attention of others, and it's really what goes back to external validation. Others think this is an amazing thing, and I think people look for that external validation when they're not sure of themselves. So I think for the longest time, that was what I was doing with everything, right? I don't think this can be applied just to work. I think it can be applied to anything that you're doing at all. whether it is a creative endeavor, whether it is something that you love. And I think what it comes down to is everyone has this desire to do something. And I think everyone starts at a different place with that. And for me, I think that it was always like came back down to my voice. I wanted validation from others because I wanted others to respond to me. I wanted others to hear me. I wanted others to tell me that I sounded smart. And I felt as though that I was setting myself up for failure because I feel like communicating in order to get validation back on that, which is a really dangerous slope. But I think recently what I've been doing, especially with this podcast, is, I mean, there's the level, we've talked about this in other episodes, of self-judgment that comes with it. But there's another level of really understanding, why am I doing this? And I think and the age doesn't really matter, but I like to set it's helpful for me to understand where I'm at and how I got here by looking at it in a timeline, say of my early 20s, when I moved to New York City, and it was to become this person that I never was to get that validation of being in a hard environment and succeeding. What does that mean? And it's all of these things of not knowing exactly what it is or why I'm doing it. But I think the most important thing that I've learned from doing this podcast is that I truly care about working through the complexities of the mind and breaking free of that and feeling light and just living life. And that's why we have this podcast. And that's why we do this. And that is my intention with it. So for me, that even when I don't feel good, even when I think I sound stupid, or even when I think I sound like, what am I saying? You have to really pause and ask yourself, well, why am I thinking that? So this has been a very long tangent, but to tie it up, I think when you know where you're going, or you know why you're doing something, you can't, and you are reaching that path, or you are doing that thing, there's no way to failure because you're putting yourself out there. I think failure is just not trying and giving up.
Wow. That's a lot. That's inspiring. I mean, I really like what you said about, it made me think a lot about like intrinsic motivation versus intrinsic motivation, like what you said about things being highly regarded from other people. And it's so interesting because when I asked you, like, how do you define perfection, I was thinking in my head, I don't even know how I define this thing that I've been striving for. Like, what is perfect? And I think it really does go down to wanting other people to validate it, and wanting other people to like it, wanting feedback from other people. And I think a lot of it goes back to kind of childhood. I think when you're a kid, I just remember always wanting to kind of impress my parents, like always wanted my parents to like what I was doing, always wanted, I played a lot of sports, like wanting my mom to come and cheer me on. And I think that kind of carries over into your adulthood of like this idea of striving for feedback from other people. And I think that's one source of motivation, like striving for something because you want someone else to validate you, to like it. And I think that is an extrinsic motivation, right? Doing something for some other reason beyond doing it simply because you like it. And I think that while there's no issue, there's no issue with striving to get for other people to like the work you're doing. I think the issue happens when that is the only reason why you're doing it, because you're so caught up in only thinking about other people liking it that you have lost sight completely of the reason why you are doing this thing.
It's a really good point. And I think that is common for that to happen.
Yes.
I want to ask you, do you feel like you were falling into that when you graduated from law school?
Yeah. I mean, I think that like when I graduated from college and in between me and going to law school, I think a lot of the way I was viewing success was very much defined of like what my parents' viewpoint of success was. And I think not only that my parents, but also just kind of like all of my peers around me, what everyone else is doing. And I think, if you go to college and you graduate from it, you see what everyone around you is doing, and you really want to do that. You want to get that high paying job or work at that prestigious firm or company or whatever. And I think that it takes you so long to even recognize that. Take that step back and ask, whose goal am I striving for?
And you were succeeding. You graduated in like the top of your class and you got a great job and you were making good money and you were succeeding at it. And it was working for you. And I think you never had the time to even think, what is it that I truly want?
So I was listening to this Hidden Brain podcast, the NPR one, and they're talking about when you're really good at something that you're doing, sometimes that's even harder to get out of, to really catch yourself as to why you're doing that thing. For example,
because you're succeeding.
Because you're succeeding.
Yeah. And that feels good.
But under whose definition are you succeeding in? That is the question. How are you defining success? Are you defining success as what you accomplishing what you deep down truly want, or are you defining success as what your parents want or what society wants? And I just think it's like the reality of it is that it's really hard to know what it is that you want. It's really hard to know in this life, like, what are you striving for? Like, what are you trying to obtain? Like, what are you really trying to do? And I think that one of the ways to really find out what it is that you're striving for is to really get in touch with yourself, peel back the layers, and then start to understand of like, what do I want to do in this life?
And it's hard to get to that point when you are amassed with comfort.
Yes.
And even though you were at this high performing job and you were doing well, you told me it was like the most anxious time in your life. I think that's really what gets people, is when everything is so quote unquote perfect from how society told you should be to be on top, and you're reaching that, but you're actually deep down like, I hate all of this and it's not making me happy. I think that's the time where you are able to get in touch with who you are, because you're realizing it doesn't make you happy and you did all these things and you achieved all these things. And you don't even have to achieve all these things to realize what I really want, because I'm not a lawyer. I haven't achieved these high standard things, and I've gotten in touch with what I realize what I actually want. So it doesn't matter what angle you're coming from. You can come from all different angles. You could be at your lowest low and realize what you actually want, and you have that internal intrinsic motivation, and that I think is what the motivator is. It doesn't matter what path you're coming from. It's the intrinsic motivator, because I was thinking about imperfect work and the importance of not labeling what you create, because intrinsic motivation is really what's going to fuel that. And I realized like that is what grit is too. You have to know your why.
What's grit?
Grit is, I don't have the exact definition up, but basically it just means that you don't give up easily. You don't give up at all, no matter what is happening. Time and time again, and not over a short period of time, but over the course of your entire life, basically. And it just clicked for me recently that is possible through intrinsic motivation, or knowing what your why is. And I think that that's an intimidating thing to answer too. What is your why? What is this? And it can be changing. It can be what feels so connected to me right now. And I think in order to uncover that, in my personal experience, you have to be so honest with yourself. And sometimes getting to honesty with yourself means facing the direct fears that are so scary, and it takes time to realize what those even are.
Right. And I think like, so I was writing a blog post for our website. We're starting to post some blogs on there, and I was writing it about like, okay, I was looking up the definition of success. I was looking at the definition of failure. I was really trying to understand like, okay, from a Webster's definition perspective, what are we all striving for, right? And like the Webster's defined success, or to succeed, to means to obtain a desired goal or some desired object, right? And failure means the inability to obtain your desired goal or object. And it really clicked for me in that moment, because I was just like, we're getting it all wrong. We're thinking that the desired goal or object is prestige, is money, is getting all this validation from other people. But what if the desired goal was just to grow? What if the desired goal was just to take the risk or take the chance and see what it feels like to like embark on this journey as in your human experience and your life? And I think like what you're saying right now, like how this is always in flux, like you can't really have one goal because it's always changing. But what if your goal is just to grow? What if your goal is just to try then?
What if it's to face difficulty every single day? That's overwhelming. Yeah. Facing difficulty in every moment of your life, ranging from cleaning up the kitchen right after you've eaten to doing a podcast or doing something on the side that you really don't want to do, but you love doing in hindsight. That takes up all of your time every single day.
and what connects to what you're saying is like the desire for things to be easy. And I think that when you are trying to strive for this unrealistic goal of perfection and happiness, in whatever term you want to define happiness, you are avoiding any obstacle that causes discomfort. You're avoiding anything that doesn't feel easy. You want to take the route that's just going to get you to the safe place. And I realize this a lot with my sexuality. I realize this a lot with my job and my career, is that if you're striving for safety, if you're striving for comfort, if you're striving for the easy route, I don't know if you're going to be happy. I don't.
I think you have to strive for the action and not the result.
Say more. I like that.
I've realized recently that for me, I don't want to live in fear. And it's so easy to live in fear and not even realize it, to live in a state of anxiety and not even realize it, because you're resisting on a subconscious level of facing your fear, facing what you have to do. And this can range from all sorts of things and can tend to be very personal. And a lot of the times sometimes like you'll have a good friend or a good person in your life who will tell you have to face this and be straight up with you. So my point in bringing that up when you asked me, why is it that we should focus on the action and the journey versus the result? Because we may never get to the result, even if we do everything right, because everything might shift and it might change. And I think you have to every day feel good. You can't just feel good once you reach a certain destination. That's not motivating. That's externally motivating once you get a reward. Intrinsic motivation comes from doing something on a daily basis that makes you feel good. And it may not feel good when you start because it may be really scary and maybe really difficult. And I want to get to a place where I'm facing my fears every day. And I think you can look at it in different ways. I'm sure in every single person's life, if you really ask them, what is your biggest fear? They'll know deep down. Mm-hmm. There is one big thing I think we all have to face. Mm-hmm. Everyone can relate to, there's something in their life that's really big and really scary that they have to face. And that's what you have to do. That's what I want to do. And I think from that you start to face little things more easily when you rip off the big Band-Aid. So the goal is to become fearless and to not fear anything. And that doesn't mean you're not going to have fear every day, but it means that you can face it. I think that's what fearless really means, is to not fear facing your fears.
And it's interesting because I think that ties on to perfectionism or striving for perfectionism, because I think the fear of failure is not trusting yourself and not thinking that you can handle things and not thinking that if something doesn't go your way that you won't be okay. And I think like what you're saying is knowing that no matter what, if you're living in a state of fear, if you're scared of how things are going to go and thinking that you can't trust yourself, like that is like one of the reasons I think why life is so hard, because we're so scared that if we post something or we do something and it's not perfect and people don't love it, then value crumbles. Everything's out the window. The way that we view ourselves out the window. It's really interesting how quickly our value, when you think about our value systems and how quickly you can go from loving yourself to, in a second, someone says something to you and all of a sudden, at the end of it, you hate yourself, your work sucks, you're like, everything sucks, like you're a failure. Mm-hmm. And I think that like showing, if you react that way, and I have personally like felt this way so much with social media, and all of a sudden I go from feeling so good to feeling so bad, it is so clearly showing that your core foundation is not there. Your core trust in yourself is not there. The understanding that you can handle what you're doing and that you are trying and that's what matters is not there. Because if that was there, no matter what anybody else says to you, I don't think it's going to, maybe yes, you'll feel hurt, but I don't think you'll break as easily. I really don't.
I love the quote, and I don't know where this comes from, of there's nothing to fear but fear itself.
That's like the quote.
I know. And to me, what that means is that things aren't that scary if you face them. Where they become truly insufferable is when you don't face them. And they're on your back constantly, following you, reminding you, pulling you down, making your life miserable. I think that is where suffering comes from. Fear really starts to get bigger and bigger. It snowballs. And at a point, we lose touch with what it is that we're trying to avoid from facing, what that big fear is. So we start fearing everything in our life. everything becomes scary and we get crippled by it. And that's no way to live. And I'm saying this because I'm coming out of this, and you can be so aware of it and your subconscious can still take control. That's part of it, is going in it and coming out of it.
That's so interesting because it's so true. Like, fear compounds and fear grows. And
I just want to like pause, because if you think of our age right now in our late 20s, all these fears that we're talking about facing, and hey, I personally, the fear that I want to face, I haven't faced it yet. So check in with me again. But imagine me trying to face it and the fears that come up for me facing it right now versus 30 years from now. Imagine how much scarier it would be. So I think getting in the rhythm of facing your fears as soon as possible is just only going to make it less scary.
Because otherwise they'll grow. And it's like, then you'll start to fear everything and you'll start to feel anxious about everything. And this goes back to what we talk about a lot. Like, it's like you'll start associating like this, like really, like you'll start, anything you try to start doing or anything you do, you're going to freeze up on. You're going to be so caught up in this idea of perfectionism or failure, and you don't even know why anymore. You don't even know why you're so anxious anymore, because this has become the base state of the way that you're living. This has become like the way that you just perceive every single thing you do.
Yeah.
Because it becomes so ingrained in your subconscious mind.
Yeah. And while I haven't faced this larger fear in my life that I want to face, this podcast is why, and I probably sound like a broken record, but everyone can find something in their life that can help them face their fears. And for me, it's really this podcast, because what is scarier than putting your voice out there, talking about things that you ultimately care about so on a personal level? But part of it is also the action and the momentum of doing it consistently, of consistently facing your fears. And it's trusting yourself. I think it's really scary to trust yourself, and you can have a lot of fear with that.
I think that consistency is really important here, because I think that if we're talking about how have I personally changed the way I define perfectionism and dealing with the fear of failure, I think that one of the big factors was just doing it. Like, stop thinking about it and just do it. You want to go start something? Start small. Like, you don't need to start thinking. Don't try not to think about this whole big picture of this whole scary world of having to get there, because of course it's overwhelming if you're on day 1 and you're thinking about day 1000, right? You just said, like, you don't even know if you're gonna get to day 1000. So what would be the point? Like, let's just I'm sorry, but like, it really comes back to me. It's death, right?
I knew you're gonna say this.
Well, it's just like, it's like, oh, don't talk about dying. Well, it's like, okay, we're all scared of it. That's another fear. But you hear stories every day about people just randomly dying tragically. Like, let's just say that like you were that person, right? And like all you ever wanted to do was try to do something, was face that fear. Would it have ever mattered? Did it matter if you ever got to that point at the end, the destination, the ultimate goal? Or would it have mattered that at that point in your life you were just embarking on trying to figure it out?
I saw this post somewhere where this mom was on her deathbed and she was moments from dying, and the last thing she said to her daughter was, "My voice did matter, and I just now realized that. Don't let your voice go unmattered."
He's got the chills.
And it's so sad, because the face of death will make us realize everything, but by the time we get there, it's too late. And it's uncomfortable. Like, you bringing up death made me uncomfortable. It makes me so uncomfortable because it's so scary, but it's the ultimate truth. It's the ultimate mirror, and it's reality. It's not in your head. Death isn't in your head. It's steeped in reality. And I think a lot of the times we live our entire life steeped in our heads and not in reality.
That's so interesting, because I just now I understand why no one wants to talk about death, because we don't live in reality a lot of time. We live in a made up world, and we almost think we can't die.
Yeah,
we think we can't die. Like, I think that a lot of time. It's hard to comprehend it. But once you can comprehend your impermanence, nothing matters anymore. Not nothing matters. You be careful. Nothing matters. And I went this whole phase where I was like, oh, I recognize when I die, so nothing matters. Why am I doing anything? It's like, no, it's almost like everything matters, in the sense of like, go do that thing you want to do. Try that thing you want to do. Like,
wait, I really like that. Everything matters, from the moment you put your feet in the floor. What is the texture of the floor you're putting your feet on? To the moment you go to sleep, and everything in between.
Well,
who are you sleeping next to? Are you sleeping with yourself? Where are you at? these are little things that we really don't pay attention to. I don't pay attention to them, but you just saying that really stopped me in my tracks. We're so lucky to be here. Everything matters. How dare we even think that what we do is so unimportant that we shouldn't do it? How dare we think that what we're doing is so awful and so bad that we're too afraid to do it because ultimately someone's going to laugh at me. That's not living in reality.
So I think the whole thing, this conversation comes back to, why are we so scared of failure? Because we're not living in reality. Because we're not recognizing the fact of how beautiful it is to be alive right now.
I think when you don't face things, it's easier to not live in reality. And ultimately, sometimes, almost always, unless you're at rock bottom, reality is easier than these false realities we've created in our head, because these false realities that we've created in our head are generally so negative about how we look at ourselves and think about ourselves. And if only we could just slip out of that for a day and we come back in touch with reality and we see that what we're doing does matter. And I think that's another powerful thing, is it doesn't matter who you are, what you do matters every single day, because we are all humans. We're all connected. Think of, and we've probably talked about this before, but think of mass celebrations or mass tragedies, how you feel so connected to everyone. From the New York Marathon is an easy one, like where thousands of people are running through the city, to things like 9/11, where everyone was impacted the same. Everyone had similar experiences. It just shows you we're all pretty similar, and that everyone has the same ability to impact someone as the person next to them. The only reason why people don't have the same impact as the person next to them is because they believe they don't. And I think that we've been told this our entire lives, and it's so cheesy, but it's not. It's true.
I feel like I've hit this place recently where I'm starting to understand that all these things that we say are cheesy, of like, oh, life is short, or you only live once, or everything matters.
They've been misused.
Yes, maybe they've been
and mislabeled on
used, but it's like, what is
TJ
Maxx? What is this discomfort of thinking all these things are cheesy? I think it's like we're missing the point entirely. No, that's right. Like you only have one life. Like we're missing the point completely. It's so easy to miss the point completely. Oh my, like I just realizing it right now again. So I'm processing so much in this conversation. Like,
well, I came home the other day and you looked at me and you're like, what do you really want with your life? And I told you, and I was like, why am I not doing that? But the thing is that I answered you instantly.
The answer's always there.
And we convince ourselves that we shouldn't do that. We can't do that. We won't do that.
I think we should talk about how to shift our goals so that we're not striving for perfectionism, but we're striving for something else. And I can start first. I think that I really shifted my goal with, starting the podcast, with everything I'm doing stuff on the side. A part of my full-time job is just asking myself every day, okay, am I trying? Am I really trying to also be present? Am I really trying to be in this moment and experience everything that's happening? Which means, am I fully immersed? Am I really here? And if I'm doing that, I'm succeeding. And I think really changing this desired goal, because like we talked about, like if success and succeeding is obtaining a desired goal, then if I am getting up every day and trying, and that is my goal, I have succeeded.
Wow.
So then I'm successful then. It's virtually impossible to fail if you shift the goal and the lens in which you're viewing that goal. If your goal is some unrealistic thing that you will never in this lifetime achieve, yes, okay, you're going to think you're a failure. But if you can bring that back and have a reality check and say, what if my goal is just to try?
So I think it's okay to have those like ridiculous goals, but that might take you your entire life to reach.
Right.
So there has to be something on the in-between. There has to be something where you're recognizing of what you're doing each day is helping you feed some other kind of goal, right? You can have these large, lofty goals that you want, but I don't think that that's the only thing you can have. And I think what you said about being present with each day, and I don't even know if there's a deeper word than present.
I know, I feel like present's another word that people...
Yeah, but it's more of like being engaged, being truly engaged, because it's so easy to spend days, weeks, months, years unengaged from every single thing that you're doing and just coasting through.
Autopilot.
Being intentional with each and every day.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. Even, especially the things you don't want to do. I think being the most intentional with the things you don't want to do is going to help you be intentional with the things that you do want to do and that are scary. So everything you do every second of the day does matter.
Appreciation for everything you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy to look at people who are like super positive and all the things, but it's like, what if that positivity is what gets them through every day? It works. For you, are you changing the way that you're viewing perfectionism and failure? Like, how those definitions changed for you? And
yeah,
what is success? What is success to you now?
I think it's having ultimate trust in yourself, no matter what situation you're in, to face fears. Truly, those are the two things for me to simplify it. Because you can have all of these goals, you can have all of these things that you want, but that's overwhelming. I think simplifying it and not avoiding. I think the opposite of avoiding is facing, right? And I have the tendency to be an avoidant person with things. And you can't underestimate how much avoiding the little things will make you avoid the large things.
You end up avoiding your entire life.
So failure to me and success to me, I'm like so sick of trying to set goals and I'm so sick of all of that. Like it's never done anything for me because I've approached it in the wrong way my entire life. I've always tried to do it and it has never worked for me in that way. And I think it's so much more about how you are waking up each and every day, and we're humans and we're going to change every day. And I think to me, success truly means facing everything every moment of the day. And that's what I'm striving for, because that's going to take you to the next step. That's going to take me to the next place I want to be. And when you're facing things, you're especially facing things within yourself, and you're being honest with yourself. So you're not letting things build up and get in the way.
Yeah.
I think just action and doing with the right intention, that is success.
Powerful conversation. I'm feeling powerful.
Did I stun you?
It was a good answer. Maybe we can I
can tie some things up here because I've been thinking a lot about this, and I wrote a blog post on this about this whole idea of imperfect work and the power of imperfect work and how we should really empower ourselves through embracing imperfection, and the imperfection of work is truly just empowering yourself and not giving a fuck about what anyone else is saying or doing, and not to disregard other people and their impact and their opinions, but really just to focus on you. And that is not from a lens of caring about what other people think. Because I think so much of our lives, of how we view ourselves, is through other people and what they think about us. But I think once you get to a point where you really feel good about what you're doing, and someone can call it stupid or dumb or like they hate it, that's when and you love it, like that is success. I think success is finding your intention and finding something that you love and that you consistently are able to do. That can be literally anything, because that feeling that you get, you're gonna bleed that into other areas of your life. So I think just finding one thing that you can feel really, really good about, that you're doing for the purest intentions of loving it, I think just doing that is really what's going to help you understand this concept. And it will bleed into larger things in your life of like the goals and the quote unquote goals and those things that you want.
That's awesome. I think it's an intention, trying. And it could be so small as to, I really care about taking an art class after work and I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to show up. The intention, when you have intention, you're succeeding.
But not even that. Like, yes, that's part of it. But I think I've had such a strong fear of failure, of imperfection my entire life. It's working through the fear to find your groove of doing something because you like doing it and it scares you to do it. Also, I think those two things.
Yeah.
I think, yes, being intentional is so important, but I don't think you can forget the component of what scares you. I think you almost have to start with what scares you. I think you have to understand, well, what about this scares me? And what do I truly want? And what's my intention with it?
Yeah.
I think you have to start with the fear, because it feels good to face your fears. And it doesn't even have to be something that you love. It can literally be anything.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like, by doing the thing you're scared of, you're going to learn why you're scared of it. that is where the momentum will start to build, because you're going to learn about yourself. You're going to learn, why are you so scared of this thing? And you say it with such passion because clearly this is something you're working on. So I could feel your passion. And I think it's awesome. And I think like just to reflect back to the listeners of I think a lot of the times the things that might really make us the happiest are the things we're scared of.
Exactly. And the things that we avoid the most are the things we're scared of. Those are the things that can make us the happiest and feel the most empowered.
Wow. This is a realization I'm having right now.
Same.
Wow.
As we do.
And there goes the point of this podcast. But I think I would just, to do a little listener challenge, I think think about the way you've been viewing success and perfectionism and failure. Think about your definitions. Think about the way that you're defining them, and really ask yourself, am I striving to achieve somebody else's definition of success? Have you really thought about what is your definition of success? What is my definition of success? If definition of success, you're realizing that involves something you're really scared of, so then you have to try that thing to really embark on that journey of understanding what that means to you.
Or just envisioning that you can be successful at all, not being put off by that word success.
Right.
I think that it's so...
Yeah, that word, yeah.
I cringe at that word. I'm like, ugh.
I hate that word.
I'm like, ugh. I don't... What? What is that? It makes me feel not good. And I think you have to challenge yourself on that. And I think you have to challenge yourself to really cherish your wins. Because I think, with all in all, being humble, I think is good. But I also think that when you work hard for the right things with the right intention, you should be proud of yourself and you should talk about yourself highly with it. You shouldn't hide that.
I totally agree.
There's things that come into your life maybe with ease that you're like, I don't, whatever. I don't need to talk about this. I don't be humble with that. But I think there's certain things that if you're working hard for it, you need to talk about it, and you need to talk about yourself highly with it, because you deserve that. And that's part of facing the fear of realizing I deserve this. I did this. I created this. And that's with this whole idea of success. It's realizing that you deserve it. That's why I said that. Success can be walking a mile, depending on where you're at, it can be anything, but it's really just facing it with the intention of knowing that you're doing this for yourself and empowering yourself, because everyone, we need more empowered people.
Yeah, totally. This has been an awesome conversation.
This has been a great combo, and I think we jumped into it quick, and I think we're going to jump out of it quickly too.
Jump in quick. I think you kind of just wrapped it up. I think we started this conversation to talk about why are we so scared to start things, and I think we kind of answered that. There's an illusionary fear of failure, and recognizing that a lot of the time failure might even be not facing that fear, and a lot of time we need to face that fear to get to where we want to be. And just the recognition, it always comes back to the recognition that we have one life. Our life is fleeting, so just so just do it.
And that means having that conversation. It means posting that Instagram. It means trying that new thing.
It means waking up and deciding that you're gonna try.
It means allowing your first thought in the morning to be, I'm gonna engage today with everything.
It starts small.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great combo. I blacked out for all of it. And I am very excited. We're posting every week for this season and continuing. So we will be out with a new episode next Tuesday. You know where to reach us. Our Instagram, Life Unpotted. Our email, info@lifeunpotted. If you have any questions, we're always here. We would love to chat about things. We love to discuss things. So we would love to hear from you. And as always, we'll see you next week.
All right. And as always, thank you guys so much for listening. And we look forward to another conversation next Tuesday. And you can catch us then.